Welcome to the Athletes Portal, a show about what it takes for student athletes to succeed in the classroom, on the field, and life after. We bring you the community that supports these athletes' success.
Thank you for tuning in to the Athletes Portal. I am your host, Keith Williams, a husband and father, proud father of two athletes. The Athletes Portal is a weekly show about youth sports. We interview the community that helps support student athletes succeed in the classroom, on the field, and life after sports. No theory here, folks, just reality. Let's get started. Today's guest is from Powder Springs, attended Gordon College, where he played basketball for 2 years, then transferred to Dalton State, and until recently was the all-time leading scorer. He has been coaching for 5 years at Mount Vernon Christian Private School in Atlanta, and he just finished his second year as head coach. Please welcome Reed Dungan to the podcast. Reed, how are you today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
My
you doing
pleasure.
this.
My pleasure. I'm excited to have you on. I'm a fan of yours. Been watching you guys' success, and I said let's get Reed on. So Reed, wanted to get started with let's get to know you a little bit better, and wonder if you're up for some quick fire questions.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get it done. First 3 things you do in the morning.
I wake up. I get my 3-year-old son True ready for school. I try to spend some time with him, make him breakfast, and then I just get up and go to work. I connect with God during that time too. I think that's always important to do in the morning. But I try to just put my dad hat on the best I can and spend some time with my young guy because I think it's just important. I value that time because that's what my father did to me. So I just try to be a dad in the most possible, especially during the season, you miss so much of early morning practices. So this time of the year, I really try to just be the best dad I can be in the morning.
I'm sure you are. No, those are definitely important moments. They don't last, they don't last for long because these kids grow up quickly.
Especially when he's 3, like he is right now. He's a little sponge, so he's so cute and says the most off the wall things.
It's fun, man. Enjoy those days because they don't last forever. So definitely enjoy that. Favorite song that gets you going?
I think this would be one that I think a lot of people know it, but there's a song by Big Sean, and it's called "One Man Can Change the World." And I kind of listen to it on the way into work or before a big game. And it's not a big upbeat song. It's kind of just a relaxing, chill song, but it kind of locks me in, motivates me, and it kind of reminds me my purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Excellent. What's the one non-negotiable in your life?
Compete, no matter what it is. Try to be the best. And no matter what it is you're doing, we want to be the best at it. We're going to be relentless with our faith. We're going to be relentless with our academics. Athletically, we're just going to keep striving for greatness.
Excellent. No, that's a great philosophy. Great way to live. We are making a movie about you. What actor is going to play you?
Channing Tatum. I think that'd be Channing Tatum. That'd be
right.
But Channing Tatum from the Coach Carter version.
All right, I like that. Yeah, it's true. They're two different Channing. I get it.
When he's loud from Coach Carter, that's my guy.
Yeah. He has changed a lot though from that role. Yeah. He's not the same guy.
When he's that character. Yeah,
there you go. I like that. That's a good one. One book you've read that has impacted your life.
It's called I Don't Mind Hitting the Bottom, I Just Hate Dragging. It was written by Tony Engel, my college basketball coach. And he just told his life story. I used to think the man was crazy when I played for him. And then I read this book and I kind of get to, read in between the lines of, why he was the way he was. There was a story in it that he got his first pair of basketball shoes out of a dumpster, and one was a 9 and one was a 7. And It just was man, I never had those kind of struggles. And now here this guy is. He's won 2 national championships. He kind of wrote out his life in his book, and he got fired. He was the interim coach at BYU, and he signed the 7-footer. Oh, what's his name? I can't believe I'm drawing a blank right here. Sean Bradley.
Okay.
Sean Bradley, that was his claim. Sean Bradley was the interim coach. He went 0-17.
Oh my gosh.
0-17 with 11 national television games and gets fired.
Wow.
With 5 kids. And that's why he said I hit the bottom, but then he found a way through adversity, wound up winning a Division II national championship at Kennesaw. Then we won one together at Dalton State in 2015. So it was just kind of a comeback story. And he was probably one of the most inspirational men of my life. So that's definitely one book that has touched me.
Definitely, definitely. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. 3 people you could eat dinner with, living or dead. Who's at your table?
John Wooden, Jackie Robinson,
Nice.
and Martin Luther King.
Nice. I like that. I like that.
But
I like that.
those would be my people.
Nah, I like that. Definitely. And finally, final question. What city or country would you love to visit?
So this is like the nerd side of me. I'm a big like Greek mythology guy. I even try to like interweave that into my coaching philosophy at times, which is kind of like with the great battles of like Achilles. That guy, like, anywhere he fought, like in the Iliad and, like those are like ancient Greece and stuff, Rome, like I want to get over there. I think that's where I would like to go.
Nice. Nice. Well, could be in the cards. You never know.
Yeah, got to make it happen.
Yeah, got to make it happen. No regrets. No regrets. So I wanted to ask you something. You're, as a coach, I think it's getting harder and harder for high school basketball players to make it into the college ranks. You know about getting there. I mean, you took the JUCO route. You took an alternative route, but you made it there. As someone who coaches, what's your take on athletes reclassing at at let's say middle school? Do you think it makes a difference?
I mean, I think it can benefit you when you're young, but I always think like you can reclass on the back end, like do high school and then you can go prep. I think one advantage of a reclassing could be like if you need it academically, but I see a lot of kids kind of, go into, they do 8th grade and then they'll homeschool and then come into high school, a little bit more developed as a freshman, stronger, actually more mature. And then, they taking that year to where they would have been a sophomore, but they come in, physically as, 15 or 16 instead of playing 14 or 15. And now it's like, it kind of like pops your eye. It's like, oh, he's a freshman?
Yeah.
So I think that's like one advantage. But at the end of the day, like, once you get to high school, it doesn't matter if you're 14, 15, 16. If you're 15 playing, you're going to be playing against an 18-year-old kid that could be a grown man almost.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually think it's more beneficial if with the way the game is now. It's just to go prep a year after and reclass, go play AAU, go prep, work on your body, work on your weaknesses there. And then, after that, JUCO is still an option. But it's just another year to just develop. So I'm big on the prep route. I went junior college. I almost went prep, but me and my family decided that JUCO is probably the best thing for me. So I'm big on, I think reclassing should be done on the back end.
I agree.
I see advantages of doing it young, but if I was doing it with my children, we would always do it on the back end of going ahead and going through high school and getting what you deserve. That's one thing I believe in is, like you just, as parents, we should just take a step back, let our kids put their head down and work and get what they get. Because I think that translates to life.
Yeah, I know, because I do see a lot of parents, and I don't know if you're seeing it, but a lot of parents do try and get a little too involved sometimes. And I remember one year, actually sophomore year, one of the parents was complaining about his kid's playing time and he wanted to go talk to the coach. I said, oh, no, don't do that. Do not do that. I mean, that's a big mistake. I mean, you're going to make your kid's life. And he ended up leaving the school, but I don't know. I don't understand how parents don't understand that at high school. Do you ever see that, or is that?
Well, we have really great families in our program.
Okay.
But everybody wants to play. And I think every coach does have, I've dealt with it, because everybody, that's mama and daddy baby. They think, that's the best thing since sliced bread sometimes.
Yeah.
But, I think like having a relationship with, the families in your program for them to be comfortable to come to you in a respectful way.
Yes.
But the main thing that I do in my program is that, I want the kid to come to me.
I agree.
And you're going to learn how to have difficult conversations as a young man. And, you're going to have to accept the feedback that comes with it. Like, if you're playing, this is why you're playing. If this is not why you're playing, but these are things we need you to do to play. And then it's going to be up to you, to go get the job done. So we always encourage, even as Mount Vernon as a school, we want our kids to advocate for themselves. So I would much rather have my players, and I've had that, and it's actually helped them figure it out. Versus, like mom and dad coming in the picture. And I get it, parents want to be involved, but my advice to parents would be like, man, make your child advocate for themselves.
I agree. Couldn't agree with you anymore. Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. So, when we spoke, you mentioned, what you look for in players to join your team. And one of the things you said was you want players to be coachable, You want them to be a fit in terms of the culture. How are you able to balance those requirements with talent? Because obviously you have a baseline standard and skills for people to be able to make the team. How do you balance that? Those traits are very important, but the person has to be able to have a certain skill level.
Right. And I think, and it's kind of like, when kids go up to the college level, and I think my time at college helped me outline it. Because, I mean, if you talk to any college coach, right, they'll look at skill, right, they'll look at academics, you look at things, but there's also going to be a box that's intangibles.
Yes.
Right. Like what do you bring to a program? So I'm just big on the intangibles because there's a lot of skill out here. There's a lot of talent, but you have to be able to, buy into a culture. We want kids that want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves and then let that brand kind of show on the court. So developing that, with the kids here in the middle school program and fostering that for them to come up in that has been the biggest thing for us here as a staff is that we want to pour into the kids that are here and make sure they understand the style of play, right? The way we're going to play, we're going to love each other. We're going to be able to take tough coaching and just kind of do it the right way. But we've passed on kids that have been interested in our program because, they haven't been the right fit from an intangible standpoint. Being talented is always going to help your case, but you got to be able to kind of do those intangible things that doesn't necessarily show up in the stat sheet.
I agree. Also, your culture, you have a very specific culture. And if you don't fit in, I imagine your players are going to hold another player accountable.
Right.
You have players in your team who I'm sure who are not going to, they know the standard and there's no exception, I would imagine. The standard is the standard.
Play. I mean, like we pride ourselves on being a player-led team, man. I think that was a beautiful thing about it. The year that we had this year was that the class of 26 really created something that put a lot of pressure on the class of 27 because the class of 26 was like, look, dude, we want to reach the championship. Everything that we accomplished this year. The class of 27, now they're like, all right, now it's our turn to lead. What are we going to do with it? So being player-led is great because, I can be at the helm of it. I can, try to pour into them. But it's a little bit different when the accountability is coming from your brother that you're really doing, like, out there on the court with. So, like, being player-led is definitely one thing that we prided ourselves on being. And, Gabe, Gabe. Like, Gabe was, like, he was the best with that, man. And Daryl and Trip Jackson, Sam Brooks, our four seniors, like, they just did a tremendous job of, owning their roles and making sure that, like, guys, we're seniors. We don't want no knucklehead sophomore, juniors, or freshmen playing the team in this record time. You know what I mean?
I can see that. I can see that.
I mean, and culture is a tricky thing. I feel like it is a very overused term in today. But when you do have one, I mean, you have to protect it. Being player-led is, I think, the best way to,
I understand that. And what you mentioned about the middle school, you guys are a private school, so you're smaller. So you have a smaller pool of players to pick from, and you coached middle school. So how important is that pipeline versus recruiting outside? Because, I've seen some schools, we know Wheeler, they got middle school, and none of those kids from the Wheeler middle school program really make it into the high school program. And I would imagine it's different in private school because you guys don't have, you have a smaller population to pick from.
Yeah, so, when I got here, I was a seventh grade coach.
Yes.
And I had five. I had a team, but there was about 5 kids. I was like, yo, if these kids stick with it, they could really help us at the varsity level. And, pouring into what you have here in a private school is, the main thing that we want to focus on because it's what we have. And, we have athletes, we got really good kids. And, I work in the middle school, so I'm able to spend a lot of time with them in like the PE setting. And then, PE basketball, I always say that's my best time to evaluate about what kids, that we could always, pour into. But, pouring into them in the middle school is extremely important. I think that's where the foundation is built, is that you got to kind of think about a house, right? The middle school for us is the foundation.
Yes.
So, the first thing you do is make sure you have really good coaches at that level.
Yes.
That can, implement your system, which we have great coaches at our middle school level, great coaches with our JV. So you start with great coaches and then you start like making sure that they run the stuff that you're running in a progression way.
Yes.
Our 6th and 7th grade team is going to be running a little bit of what we do. And the 8th grade is going to be a lot more of what we do. In the JV, you're basically doing what we do. And by the time they get to the varsity level, they know these are the things we do on defense. These are the things we do on offense. And now there's not much of a learning curve, but that starts in the middle school. So pouring into what we have here has been it's the way we keep things rolling. It's the reason why we've been able to, accomplish. After we won a state championship, we graduated eight or nine guys off that team. And, 2 years later, I mean, we went 15-13 the next year. But that's because those kids that were in middle school, they were freshmen on that state championship team. And then they were
Yes.
sophomores. I said, y'all were puppies. We got to turn y'all into some big dogs.
Yeah.
Grow up a little bit, right? And we were going to go 28-4 with those kids that, came up through the middle school. I think, pouring into what you have in the middle school, elementary school, lower school is so important.
Do the middle schoolers get some time around the high schoolers? Because obviously it's two separate teams, but do they get around them, like to interact with them? How do you?
Absolutely. I make it a point because I remember being a kid, growing up in Powder Springs and watching, those McEachern teams and Marietta and the Wheeler teams. And those guys were my heroes, man. So and then I work with the middle school kids and I see that, they really look up to our guys. So anytime that, I can have my guys, show up to the games, all right, guys, if we have an hour or so before practice, we're going to go to the middle school game and y'all are going to be their student section.
Yeah.
Or we're going to have them, they can run out with us, or they're going to make the tunnel, or they're going to be water boys, or just if they come over during the day, during their GTD period, just interact with those kids. Because I think when you have those kids, they spend their Friday and Tuesday nights, Saturday nights coming to watch you play.
Yes.
Right. This basketball is also a source of entertainment. People are coming and paying to watch you play. So
yes.
If these kids want to come in and pay and watch you play on Friday night, let's come over here and interact with them, and because you guys are their heroes.
Yeah. And that's important for them to know. That's important for the high schoolers to know because they might not realize the influence they're having. And so I like the fact that you bring them around. That's a smart move.
I think.
Yeah.
For a lot of kids, right, because we have a lot of multi-sport athletes here, for a lot of kids, that one small interaction could be the spark that makes them want to play basketball.
That's true. That's true.
So you just definitely have to be intentional with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. That definitely makes sense. I've seen a lot of coaching, and I got to tell you, you're intense. I've seen you on the sidelines. Do you get to go head to head with some of your players in practice? Because you're still fairly young. You're in shape. You're not somebody who's been out of the game for years and years. So, do they ever challenge you or?
They used to, and then they learned pretty quick that coach could boogie a little bit. Coach could boogie a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just a competitor, man. I'm a competitor, and that's one thing that I hope all of my players, a lot of people say, a team's going to take on the personality of a coach. They used to try to poke the bear until they learned, right? You know what I mean? That I can still boogie a little bit here and there. But, I've had 2 Achilles surgeries, so it's a little bit different now. So I tell them I retired, but they from the old days, stories have been passed down. Nah, coach, you don't want to play coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it because it is a first of all, it's great for the culture.
Yeah.
Second, keeps you healthy, keeps you on your, and, it humbles them a bit, makes them realize there's another level out there,
And they also they listen to you, but I always feel being as a young coach, they're like, oh, well, coach did it. He can go out there and do it. You have that ear a little bit more, knowing that he can come out here and actually show me what it's supposed to look like. I could go out there and demonstrate a pick and roll read. I can demonstrate whatever, a combo, whatever the play is. So those days they're starting to get behind me, but for sure before the surgeries, he had to pull me off the floor.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I could see that because, like I said, I've seen you. Because one of the things we do, that, we wanted, we were about this close to coming and playing for you, my son Jackson. And so we got, I saw you coach and I was like, man, it's intense, serious. And we know Jay's intense. And when Jay said, Jay really endorsed you and said good things about you. And, and you and I spoke, I was like, wow, man, this is a great coach. So I like that because everybody's not like that. A lot of coaches, you don't see that intensity all the time. And so Jay's a little like that. He's crazy. I don't know if you've ever heard stories. Yeah. Okay.
All coaches, man. I think we both, probably were coached up in that old school era.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know I definitely was. I
Yeah.
was I was coached by, what would not fly today probably
Oh, yeah.
in today's world.
It's a different world with coaching now.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but I still am get after my guys. Like I think Danny Hurley said something that I thought was like beautiful is that, like in practice, I'm gonna be the guy that is all over you. Like some days you're not gonna feel like you can do anything right. But when it's game day, I'm kind of like that boxer trainer in your corner, teaching you, helping you, encouraging you, making you navigate through the game and whatnot. So practice is where it goes down for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, so as you're bringing some of these younger players on, because you guys are going through some transitions now and you guys have a talented team. And I always think it's tough for coaches because you have some guys, your guys who are your main guys, Gabe and those guys, there definitely is a difference. There's a gap between them and the younger players. How do you balance, still developing them, but you want to win? And that's not easy for coaches.
Right. But that's a great question because that's one thing that I'm still trying to figure out. I don't have this thing figured out, but I think the biggest thing that, I think planning ahead of knowing like, all right, we're losing this, so we're going to have to bring these certain guys along. So if we can get Gabe out as much as possible in some of these games, like let's go ahead and let them get it. Like if we're up big or down big, like let's get these guys varsity reps so they know what it looks like. Let's get them in the weight room. Let's get them competing against them in practice. But there's no better teacher than experience. So we're trying to find minutes for them is, I think, the best possible way to get people really prepared for what's to come. Like we'll have Jamal Oliver at the helm next year. He was a freshman, The progression is very similar to Gabe's.
Yes.
AJ Patterson was the senior point guard when Gabe was a freshman. And, AJ was at the helm for a year when Gabe was at a freshman. And then Gabe stepped into it as a sophomore. He kind of passed it down. And Gabe was just a senior. Now Jamal's a freshman. And now, like he kind of got to give him the game. But I'm also telling Gabe, like, you got to teach him. And on the other side, I'm like, Jamal, you got to soak all this up. Soak it up because next year, like, these keys are going to be in your hand and we're going to only go as far as the point guard takes us.
That's true.
So I think, just finding them minutes is the biggest thing.
Yeah. I think it's a challenge of every coach. And I'll tell you, I've seen it even at the college level. I've been watching where Jackson's going to be going at Duquesne and they play like 7 or 8 guys. There are a bunch of guys who I know are good players. And they get in every now and then, and they're good. They do a good job, but the guys ahead of them are just better. And it's like, how do you balance? So if the college coaches are having trouble, you guys have got it. It's got to be hard for you too.
And then I think it's just being transparent. Like I tell my guys, like, look, guys, I'm gonna play 8.
Yeah,
I'm playing 8. Now, it's up to you to see who's gonna be in that 8.
Yeah.
Every day in practice, I'm not a coach that's going to sit here and tell the dream like, hey, you're going to play tonight. Like, no, if you don't play, you probably know coming into the game you're not going to play.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'll play 8. Even if I got 9 or 10, I'm comfortable with playing 8. So creating an environment in practice, I think, is always where these players can earn playing time for me. If you come in and you have a couple really good practices and you string performance together, I'll throw you out there and give you some minutes. But it's another thing players need to understand is that, everybody should be grateful for everything that they deserve or earn. If you're giving 5 to 7 minutes, if you want that to turn into 12 to 15 to maybe even 20, what you do in that 5 to 7 minutes is going to determine if you stay or if you don't.
True.
The attitude can't be, oh, I only got 5 minutes. It's like, no, well, what did you do with those 5 minutes?
That's true. That's true.
So I think the perspective is always everything when it comes to talking about playing time.
Yeah. I also think there's a role that people have to self-awareness. Like kids have got to, I think by the time you get to high school, you should have self-awareness, honestly, by middle school.
Yeah.
Like you should sort of know, like you shouldn't be shocked of who's ahead of you when you're in middle school. I get it if you're in elementary or a little kid, but by middle school, you should sort of know, that guy's better than me. What do I got to work on? Or what's the specialty? What can I do really well? Like, can I go play some really good defense? And then, like how can you impact winning? And what I like about coaches, good coaches, especially coaches like yourself, is you're you're straight up. You're going to let people know what the deal is. It's not going to be a mystery. And people have to respect that at the end of the day.
Man, my mama always told me honesty is the best policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be straightforward and, That's how I live. That's how I was raised.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. So, you're a dad of two young boys. Do you have any advice you would give to parents on how to navigate today's sports world? Because it's obviously your boys are coming up in a world completely different from how you grew up. And it's probably going to be maybe a little different from how it is today. But how are you going to navigate them and what advice can you give?
With being a coach, my kids are super young, like 3 and 4 months old. 3-year-old, 4 month old, two little boys. I was working a CP3 camp, and there was a guy running the camp. His name was Jeff Becker, and he said, and he was having a parent seminar, and he said something that I thought was just genius, and it made a lot of sense to me. He said, "There's only 5 words that a parent should say to their kid after a game, and that's 'I love watching you play.'" No matter how it goes. As parents, if you've made the decision to place your child in a program, in a school, AAU, whatever it is, if you've made the decision to trust a coach with your son's development, and just take a step back and be a parent,
I agree.
because I'm gonna be that, and I'm gonna place my son with a kid with a guy that I trust in his development. Now, like if my son ever has questions, absolutely I will pour into him. But I think a lot of people should just, give their kid the resources if they want them, right? If you're able to, like give them, like we're in this thing to provide a better life for our kids than what we had. But man, just do that and be dad or be mom.
I agree.
And I think that's the way you enjoy it, because I actually look forward to it, being a coach.
Yeah.
I can't wait to just come to a game and sit down and watch it.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like I get a little bit of that right now. I get to go to a 3-year-old soccer game. I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah,
The game,
I agree.
So I think
I agree.
a lot of parents should just, that's what they want to hear from their mom or dad. Like they know if they didn't shoot the ball well, or they
Yeah.
didn't have their best game, or they know if they had a really good game. So I love watching you play. I think should be a lot of what parents should reinforce after games, and let the coach.
No, I agree. I couldn't agree more with you on that because it's hard. It's hard to be a coach, and I've seen parents who just, for the most part, most parents are pretty cool, especially as you get older. But we've all seen the parents who are negative, and it doesn't help their kid in any way. It doesn't help the environment. It's doesn't do anything for anybody. So yeah, and it is more enjoyable to sit back. I mean, I've coached Jackson when he was younger, but not like maybe once just helping out. I didn't want to do it. It was more stressful. It wasn't worth. And this is like we're talking like under 10, like little kids just helping out in like T-ball and stuff, just like as a dad helping out. But I knew I had no business doing that. And you're right, you enjoy it more when you're not having. And that's why you see some parents have never experienced working with the coaches to appreciate how hard it is to coach. I got to do that at a younger age, and I saw all the crap the coaches went through, and I helped them. I was like, ooh, I don't want that. So I get what you're saying. I know you're going to enjoy being a parent.
Yeah, I just want to pay my admission into the game, sit down, and watch him play.
Yeah, yeah,
And if he loves it, we'll work at it. And then, I'll help him get there. I'll use all my resources to help him get there. But I think that, kids need to put their head down and work, and you get what you get.
definitely.
If that's D1, D2, D3, NAIA. I played NAIA ball, man. I played JUCO and NAIA ball. Nothing was given to me. I had to go
Yeah.
earn,
And JUCO is tough. You gotta, that's not easy at all. It's not what people think it is. Those players are.
Man, I was getting my ankles taped with no pre-wrap.
Gee.
Like I played. It wasn't glorious, but it was some of the best time of my life, and it made me who I am today. Like just being competitive and knowing that, like, yeah, these are my teammates, but we're all trying to get out of here, And then playing NAIA ball and playing for a man who made me want to become a coach. Like just that, there's something special in the pursuit of it.
It's a process.
Yeah, you got to fall in love with the process and let your kid fall in love with that process. If your kid loves that process, he's going to be fine. You just support him through it and love him through it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have to say, I've been very blessed. We've had great coaches, especially Jay. Jay's been
he's
wonderful.
The best.
Yeah. He's been an unbelievable coach. He and I are still, we're tight. Even more than basketball. So he's somebody that we'll definitely have a continuous relationship with. He's just been a great coach, and Jackson and him are pretty tight. Jay's definitely, he's one of a kind.
I enjoy competing against him. When he was in our region,
Yeah.
I spent many hours like watching this film, and I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna guard this, or like playing them in the Final Four. I was like, man, these guys are hot, and the job he did at Pisgah, man, I had so much respect for him and what he's
Yeah.
done and what he's doing inspiring now. I think Jay Sloan is, I think he's gonna be he might be in the Final Four one day, man.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see it. You guys might end up being on the same team one day. You never know.
I hope
You
so.
never know how paths can cross, So, yeah. Final question. What's next for Mount Vernon basketball?
Right now, we just stacking days. We just stacking days. We taking it one day at a time.
Nice.
It's 8:30 and our guys are just leaving the weight room. So like we are literally just stacking days. We're gonna stack days and get better. Take one day at a time. We're gonna focus on the 24 hours that we're blessed with every single day, and that's what we're gonna focus on. How can we get better today? That's what's next for us, is getting better tomorrow.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I am going to be rooting for you guys and wishing you guys all the success in the world. I know you guys will be successful, and I really hope you guys get a state championship.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it a lot, and I thank you for what you're doing for the community, and I appreciate you having me on, having a guest, Keith. And all the best to Jackson. He's a great player, but I think he's an even better kid, and that's a testament to how you raised him. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.